Welcome to our channel. My name is Tracy. I'm the keeper of the home here at 4D Farms, where we are all about faith, family, home, and farm. I hope you find something on our channel that will encourage you and inspire you on your journey. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, hit like and subscribe, and be sure to turn that little notifications bell on so you'll get notified every time a brand new video is uploaded. We hope to see you in each and every one. Thanks for watching. Y'all, bread making does not have to be hard. And if you will walk through this video with me and learn a lot of these basics and prepare yourself to get ready to go further onto this bread making journey with me, you'll understand why I'm sticking this right in here right now in this series before we go any further, okay? So you might want to get you a little pen and a piece of paper, because I have spent the past 2 weeks compiling all these basics, tips and tricks, knowledge, to understand this better and break it down better on this bread baking journey, to not make it so hard. And like I said, if you'll learn some of these basics and get the general idea, your bread making journey will go so much easier. And if you do come up against a bump in the road or a little frustration, you'll know, and you can go back to refer to this video or some of these notes and say, aha, that's what I did. That's what I did. Okay? So y'all, go get you, take right now, 10 seconds or whatever, go get you a pen and a piece of paper, because I got a lot of ideas, tips and tricks, and just basic knowledge to make this go a whole lot smoother before we get further into this series, okay? That last one, the 5-minute no-knead bread, y'all, that was easy, convenient, fast, okay? On the go, you got it ready. But now we're fixing to get into some more where you might want to do this fresh, okay? Or you might want to take a big batch cooking day, okay, or baking day, okay? And then get ready to do this next journey in the bread making series, okay? So go get your stuff. I don't have my frilly pen, y'all. I've just got a grape smelling one. That smells like grape, y'all. I'm missing my frilly pen, but I got another one. Okay, so go get y'all's and meet me right back here, okay? All right, y'all. You ready? Okay, y'all got everything ready. This is a lot of things that I want to take one video and put this in there. Some of this stuff I did cover in the 5-minute no-knead bread recipe video. And then, you know, as we got started, all the things we did with that one, okay? And I'm like, you know what? Maybe they're walking into this blind. And if they need to refer back to something, the further along in these videos we get, they're not going to know which video to go to. Like, oh, she said something about this. I need to go back and find it, but I don't remember what video it's in. That's the purpose for this one. I want to put everything, all these basics, into one video. For number one, you can go back and refer to it. You can save it and say, she covered this. I want to go back and find it. It's in one video. I'm putting all this from that information and the next section coming up in this series all in one video, so you can save it, refer back to it, take notes. If you're missing them today and you can't keep up, just pause it and do the rest of the video later and finish taking the notes. Or just save it right now. When you've got time, go sit down later. Know to get you a pen and a piece of paper, and then start taking notes when the time is convenient for you, okay? But I wanted to compile it all in one video for easy reference. You can go back to and find it easy. Number two, you're not walking into this next section blind and like, this is just too overwhelming. If we cover some of these basics and I go ahead and walk you through some of these now, the videos coming up, they'll be better understandable. And you'll be like, oh, okay. Okay, that's what she was talking about. Now I see why you have to do this. Now I see why this flour works better. Oh, I think that's going to come out good. You see what I'm saying? We can cover these first to where you're not going into this next section blind. Okay? And then some of this stuff is going to be getting you ready for the next section. I wanted to start you out on the easy end first. The easiest things in this series first, like the biscuits, okay, the cornbread, okay, and then we got into the 5-minute no-knead bread. That's one of your quickest, easiest ways to get bread on the table on a whim, because you've mixed up that dough. Now you've baked something with it the first time, then you've put the rest in your refrigerator and you've plucked off of it for a week. Okay, you may have already made another batch by now. Did y'all like that pizza? Ooh, y'all, I use that recipe for our pizza crust 95% of the time. Well, 75% of the time. There's also another pizza crust that I'll be sharing that I use if we want a thicker, breadier crust, like the what's it called? Deep dish crust, whatever, thicker, breadier crust. That 5-minute no-knead bread recipe that I use for the pizza crust, I roll it out thinner, okay, and use it that way. So we've got, like, you know how like in the old days you sat down and you went to Pizza Hut to eat, and you got to choose the thin, personal pan, deep dish, thick crust, all such as that, pan, whatever they called it. Okay, there's another pizza crust that I use for, that one. Okay, so we're going to get into that too. All right, so that dough you could use for so many different things. Okay, you can add things to it, y'all. Okay, the same thing goes for this next section of bread recipes that applied to that one, with just a little more information. That bread did have yeast in it, yes. Okay, but it was a quicker dough simply because it's no knead. Okay, which is easier on me. Okay, but then there's times when I want that softer bread, and the kneaded bread, okay, and using my stand mixer. Okay, but some of these basics are going to get us ready for that. Okay, but just know the same principles that we're fixing to cover and that I covered in that video for that dough, the same principles, some of those exact same things are going to go for this next section. And I'll tell you what, add-ins. I'm going to cover some of this because, y'all, I'm going to have to check off some of this stuff on my list, because for 2 weeks, I compiled all this information to put it in this one video to make it so much simpler. But I'm going to go back and review and then get you ready for the next section of videos, okay? And then the next section of videos, okay? Because I'm going to kick it up a notch, because I've been learning some more things, and I'm going to kick it up a notch and go a step further, because what I've learned, I want to share that information with you in case you want to start doing it, okay? So the same principles can apply. You can add things, add-ins to that dough and this dough, any doughs. You can do add-ins like seeds, grains, like flax seeds. I know a lady who puts flax and fennel in a certain kind of tasty bread that they like, okay? Grains, like oatmeal, okay? You can add in things. You can make breads using nuts, seeds, dried fruit, like raisins, cranberries, okay, figs if you want to. Make sure it's dried fruit for that particular bread, okay, like cinnamon swirl raisin bread comes to mind. We may try some of that because, y'all, I'm liking the looks of that bread, okay? I'm liking the looks of that bread. All right. Just different things that you can add to your bread. Cheddar jalapeno bread. Just a cheese bread, leave the jalapenos out. A cheesy garlic parmesan bread, a mozzarella bread. Something to go with different dinners for different tastes. Like your cheesy breads might go better with spaghetti, lasagnas, okay? See? Your add-ins, okay? Play around with it. Start mixing things in your doughs, but just kind of right now try to avoid anything wet, okay? Blueberries, strawberries fresh might make your bread a little soggier. Save that for like a bread that's more like a muffiny type texture, you know, like banana bread. Okay, save your wettish ingredients for that kind of bread. But right now, we're talking about yeasty breads like rolls. And this is the next part we're going to cover. Same fundamentals, same purposes and basics of the other bread, just like this one, your add-ins. Now let's talk about all the things you can do with this bread. Okay? Things like the ways that you can shape it to make different things. Just like I showed you all them different shapes with that 5-minute no-knead bread, the same things can apply to your yeasted breads, the rolls, the hamburger buns. Oh my gosh, all different kinds of buns. Okay, you got your rolls. Then you've got like your mini rolls, like the little clover leaf rolls, hot cross buns. Okay, then you've got like hamburger buns, hot dog buns, hoagie buns, Subway buns. Okay, French loaves. Stretch those babies out though. The longer you make that dough, the more things you can make with it. French loaves. Then you can get into the baguettes like we made. Okay, there's so many ways you can play with this dough, y'all, like a kid playing with Play-Doh. Crescent rolls. Then you get into your flat, okay? Your flat ones. Remember me telling y'all there was some with that 5-minute no-knead bread that you can let it rise? But then there's some that you can go ahead and make a flatter bread and baking it before it rises. The breadsticks, the focaccia bread. I need to go back and say something. One of my videos, y'all, that I made in a hotel, I made that bread and I called it ciabatta bread in the air fryer. I apologize. That was not ciabatta bread. That was focaccia or focaccia, however you pronounce it. I'm not Italian, so however you pronounce it. I knew it had some C's in it, a C in it, but the ciabatta bread was just coming to my mind. But then later I was like, that's not ciabatta. It's focaccia or focaccia, however they pronounce it. Okay, that's the one that I made in the air fryer, and I made the indentions with the olive oil, and then I had all that stuff on it. But I've tweaked it, y'all, and we're gonna make some more in my own kitchen, because I think one reason why that bread didn't turn out as good is because I loaded that baby up with the fixins. I think I had just a little too much fixins on top of that bread. So we are going to try that bread again. Just know it's called focaccia or focaccia. Okay, and okay, so I apologize, I got the name wrong, and there's probably some bakers out there, she don't know her bread from whatever. Okay, you're right, I just got the name wrong because I knew it had some C's in it. I just got the name wrong and I said it wrong, but I can't go back and change the name of the video because I said it in the video. So I'm like, I can't change the title because I said what it was in there. But just know, I'm backing up. I got the name wrong, okay? We're going to try that bread again and not put as much, because I can load some stuff up, honey. Okay? I can load load of bread up. But I had just a little too much stuff on it, okay? And cooking it in the air fryer was just completely different, but I tried, okay? I tried. It did turn out good, but okay, you know. And then the olive bread that I did in the air fryer, no, y'all, that was the bomb. Pioneer Woman's olive bread. If y'all didn't see that one, and if it's not on this playlist, I will try to go back and link it on this one, because there's a bread I made in the air fryer on that one, and it was Pioneer Woman's olive bread. Y'all, that was the bomb, and I loaded that baby up too. My husband's like, maybe a little thinner on the mixture next time. Oh, really? Because I love it. And he was like, just go a little less next time. I go to the extreme, y'all. Okay? But anyway, so your different, the longer you make your bread, the more you can do with it, okay? Then your flat ones that you're going to bake before it rises. Because y'all, that no-knead bread, you've got some breads that you can do a rising time, some that don't require rising time. Your flatter breads, your cheese sticks. Cheese sticks don't get that big, okay? You want your cheese sticks kind of a little flatter so they can be cheese sticks like Pizza Hut, and you dip them in that marinara sauce, okay? Do that, okay? The focaccia bread. What's another one? Y'all, I even use that one to do cinnamon rolls with. Y'all, I'm going to tell you right now the possibilities with cinnamon rolls. I'm going to go ahead and give y'all some more tips so y'all can be practicing. And then we're going to do some using the kneaded dough, okay? Y'all, I've already got a video of me making my homemade cinnamon rolls. I'm using one of these bread recipes for my cinnamon roll recipe too, because y'all, it works great, okay? We'll get into multi-purpose recipes here in just a second. That's the next bullet point, or we're doing like an outline. You got your Roman numerals, and then you got your little bullet point. Okay, so we're going to do that. All right, so your cinnamon rolls. Y'all, my cinnamon roll recipe I use, I don't just have to make cinnamon rolls. I can make that cinnamon swirl raisin bread. I can make some cranberry pecan bread. I can make, just by putting things in between there, okay? My cinnamon rolls, everybody loves, even my granddaughters, okay? I make a healthy version because I make some wheat ones for my husband, all right? Oh, y'all, you can throw some things in your cinnamon rolls, and you can do it with a no-knead bread too, okay? That 5-minute no-knead bread, I use that one too to make cinnamon rolls with when we're traveling. My 5-minute no-knead bread recipe, y'all, I can use it at home, and it's a faster, quicker bread, and have it on hand. I also use that bread dough, y'all, that 5-minute no-knead bread dough, while we're traveling because of the convenience. I can't travel with my big, heavy mixer, y'all. I just can't. My husband fusses at what all I pack now, and it's so heavy, okay? So I can't bring my stand mixer, okay? So that bread comes in handy when we're traveling. And I made some things with that 5-minute no-knead bread in a hotel in my air fryer. I've made the cinnamon rolls. I made the dinner rolls. I made the focaccia bread that I accidentally called ciabatta. I think I've done some breadsticks, y'all, but I don't think I did a video of that. Shame on me. Okay, I use that one when we're traveling because of the convenience and the ease of it. And I can use my air fryer. Now, yes, it does bake up a little bit different in the air fryer. But y'all, I can still make bread on the road. On the road again with my bread by my side. I could write a song, y'all. Okay, anyway, get serious. Okay, now... The same principles are going to apply to the next section of bread, your kneaded bread, as that one, okay? The next one, y'all, is the different pans that you use. You can use the same different kind of pans on the kneaded doughs that you can that no-knead bread, just to play around with your bread. Y'all, you can use the muffin tins, make the little clover leaves, like I stated in that one. And I think I showed y'all all my different pans you can use, okay? Same thing's going to apply to these. See how many different shapes you can make. See how many different pans you can use, okay? Y'all, in my no-knead bread, I used the square one. I used my little baguette, I don't know what it's called, y'all. Baguette pan, I guess. I used my sandwich loaf, the Pullman loaf bread pan. Y'all, we're going to be using those same principles, same playing around with add-ins, seeing what all we can get out of these. Okay? Playing around, making different shapes, using different methods, different pans. We're going to be going all through that again, just using different recipes and kneaded breads in this next section. Okay, the next thing. Y'all, just like I told you in that, well, I may not have told you in that other video because that was one specific recipe. When you're searching, this is the next highest bullet point, Roman numeral. Make sure you highlight this. Recipes. Y'all, when I first started getting into bread baking years ago, I started researching bread recipes. Y'all, you can get overwhelmed by thousands of recipes on the internet. But they're all, let me find my notes here. They're all going to have the same basic ingredients, and then there's going to be some recipes that are just going to use just a couple of different ingredients. Let me explain. Don't get overwhelmed when you are looking for a bread recipe. Just know this person's going to use this recipe because this is what suits her. This person's going to use this recipe because it's what suits them, what their family likes, their taste preferences, okay? Everybody's going to be different, okay? Just know your basics are going to be, just under recipes, just know your basic recipes are going to call for, of course, flour. We're going to get into the next bullet point in a minute, the flours. Okay, I'm going to start breaking down some of these things so you can better understand when we get into bread baking and things that you might need to prepare to have in your pantry before we get these started. And then you can get an idea. Well, I don't really like all-purpose flour. Okay. I'm going to give you some more flours you can use that you can try those, okay? We're going to get into the different flours, okay? But your basic bread recipes are going to have flour, of course, okay? Yeast, of course, okay? Yeast. We're going to get into the yeast, and I'm going to explain about yeast. We're just not there yet. Let's just cover the basic ingredients. Flour, yeast, of course, water for your hydration. You can't make bread without water or a liquid, okay? Then, salt. Salt is going to be in a lot of your recipes, y'all, because it helps activate, okay? And flavor too, okay? So you've got flour, your liquid, mostly water, but I'm going to tell you something in a minute. Your yeast, of course. A sweetener, because a sweetener helps activate yeast. I'm trying to keep it in a straight line here. We'll go to the bullet points in a minute. A sweetener and a fat. You can add some kind of fat in. Now, let me say this. The different sweeteners, you are going to need a sweetener. That's basically in all of your recipes because sugar, a sweetener, activates yeast. And I'll cover that in just a second because that's another bullet point. I'm trying to stay on track here, okay? So your basic ingredients, flour, yeast, a liquid, which is 9 times out of 10 water, salt, and sugar. Okay? 5 basic ingredients: flour, water, yeast, sugar, and salt. Now, different recipes, you can add a fat, which is an oil or a butter. I got a bullet point on that one. Just a second. You can find a recipe and say, like, wait, they're putting oil in this one. Okay, don't freak out. There are some recipes that you can add a fat, oil or butter. Okay, there is some recipes that you can add milk instead of the water. So don't freak out if you see a recipe that they're using milk or powdered milk. That's a bullet hole. I'm fixing to get to that one because we're going to break down the ingredients, okay, and show you the substitutions and the reasons for them and the helps, okay? So I'm trying to just go, okay, and break this down. Now, here's the side bullet points, okay? Your flours. 9 times out of 10, a lot of people are going to use all-purpose flour, okay? Don't use self-rising flour because your yeast is going to be your rising. You can use all-purpose flour. A lot of people in bread baking will use bread flour. The difference between bread, it's a little more expensive. The difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour is it has more protein. And it does give a little bit of a different texture. But y'all, if you're like me and you don't want to have 6 different kinds of flour in your pantry, you can just use all-purpose flour. Okay? All-purpose flour is all-purpose. Okay? Bread flour has more protein, which gives you more gluten strength and strands that makes it stretchier and has a different texture. That's all. Okay? And it has just a little more protein. The protein gets activated to form that gluten and those gluten strands that just makes it stretchier and you can pull it better, okay? And stretchy and fold and knead better, okay? More gluten and just a little bit difference in the texture of it. That's it. But if you don't want to go buy, y'all, I like to just have basic ingredients on hand instead of going and buying all these different flours for this, different flour for that, different flour for that. Did you know that you could turn all-purpose flour into self-rising flour? And I have started doing that to where I don't always have to go pick up self-rising flour just for biscuits. Okay, that's mostly what I use my self-rising flour for is biscuits, okay? And I don't make biscuits all the time, okay? So I'm like, and then if I do get in a whim, like, I want some biscuits this morning. Dag nabbit, but I don't have any self-rising flour. But I have all-purpose flour. Let's turn that into self-rising flour. There you go, okay? All you do is add a little bit of baking powder and salt. Look that up just to make sure, okay? I'm doing that off the top of my head, and that's what I can remember. You can add baking powder and salt to it, okay? To turn all-purpose flour into self-rising flour, okay? Now, you can use bread flour if you want to, and you may like it better. I just always use all-purpose flour. Okay, just know that there is going to be, and you're going to see a lot of recipes that's going to say bread flour. Just know you can substitute all-purpose flour. All right, now, wheat flour, oat flour. I have substituted recipes and use all wheat. I have taken recipes and tweaked them and used half and half, all purpose, half whole wheat, okay? Then I've even made breads where I've done like thirds, played around with it, made them more nutritious, all purpose, whole wheat, oat flour, okay? You can play around with different flours if you want to. You can play around with your recipes, do half and half. Some of my breads, I do add the wheat flour to make it healthier for my husband, to where he can handle it a little bit better instead of doing all-purpose flour, okay? Just know that if you're using a denser grain like wheat and oat, you're going to need to add a little extra liquid because those flours soak up and they are going to be a little denser and give a little different texture. You'll see the difference between a wheat loaf, if you use all whole wheat, than a bread recipe that's made with all-purpose flour. When you cut it open, you'll see the difference in the crumb, the difference in the texture. One is looking a little more dense, and then it'll be kind of grainier, okay? The other one's going to be a softer texture, crumble, okay? Chewier texture, all right? Just know your whole grain flours, your denser grains like wheats, possibly rye, oats, is going to soak up more moisture. You're going to have to hydrate those a little more. They are going to require, and we're fixing to cover this, and I'm just going to state it, but we'll cover it in a minute. It's going to need more resting time. Okay, I'll get into that in just a second, but just the flours. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in there because I'm doing this because I have gotten into this, and it's also going to be the third section of my bread making series. My husband bought me the grinder attachment, the grain mill attachment for my KitchenAid mixer because I wanted to start grinding my own grain. Some people call it milling your own flour. You'll hear that expression too. And I'm doing that. I'm getting into that. And that's going to be the third section. If you think that interests you and you want to start doing that, because I want to tell you this and teach you about this, about all-purpose flour. I'm getting into grinding my own grains. And my husband bought me the wheat berries, the hard white wheat, the soft white wheat. I am buying oats by the canisters or the bags and grinding my own oats to make oat flour. Of course, I've been doing that anyway, and I use my food processor to make up a batch of oat flour for that. I was doing that to begin with, but then I was like, you know what, honey, sweetheart? I would like to get into grinding other different kind of grains. So y'all, he hooked me up, and I've been practicing. And let me tell y'all, it makes a big difference because here's why. This is something about all-purpose flour. And y'all, I'm not knocking all-purpose flour from the grocery store. Don't get me wrong, because I still use it. But when I can't use all this stuff when we're traveling, I depend on all-purpose flour. And sometimes I still do at home, okay? The all-purpose flour from the grocery store, you'll see bleached and unbleached. But I want you to know this about all-purpose flour first, store-bought. All you're getting from that bag of flour from the grocery store is the endosperm that's been ground up. The bran has been processed out, and the wheat germ has been processed out. Y'all, that's where half of your nutrition is coming from, is the whole grain. That was another reason why I wanted to get into grinding my own grain, okay? Because I want all the benefits of that grain, okay? I want the bran, the wheat germ, and the endosperm. I want all of the grain. But the flour in the grocery stores, all you're getting is the endosperm that's been ground up and processed. You're not getting the bran, the wheat germ. If you want those, you're going to have to buy those ingredients to put back into your all-purpose flour from the store. Okay. It has nutritional value, but not as much. Okay, but I still depend on it sometimes in a lot of my recipes. Okay, that's the reason why I wanted to get into grinding my own grain. I wanted the whole grain. I wanted all the nutrition I can get out of that grain. Okay, it's healthier for you. The bleached has got more chemicals in it because they bleach what's left. So y'all, the bleaching process is depleting that other little bit of nutrition you're getting from the ground up endosperm, okay? So the more your flour is processed and bleached, the lesser the nutritional value, okay? Then, y'all, what do you think they got to put in that bag of flour for shelf life purposes, to extend the shelf life? Preservatives and the bleaching process. You can still use it if you want to, because like I said, I still do. I still depend on it sometimes. But that's the reason why I wanted to get into grinding my own grain. Now, when I'm traveling, I will grab that bag of all-purpose flour. Okay? Unless I can find whole wheat or something. But y'all, the same thing goes. If I were you, if you're going to use the store-bought all-purpose flour, I have switched to unbleached. Unbleached. I don't want those extra chemicals in my flour, okay? That's a lot of information about flours, okay? Your different kinds. Just know and I think I probably told you in the no-knead bread recipe, your flours are going to make a difference in your texture, okay? Now, if you use the all-purpose flour, and you want it to turn out to have that bread flour consistency, you're going to have to find some kind of protein to put in that all-purpose flour. You can use wheat germ. They sell it in the jars, I think, or the little packages. The wheat germ, you may want to put back into it to give it that protein that they took out of it. I can't remember the substitutions, y'all, but there is some substitutions that you can put back into all-purpose flour to give it that bread flour consistency. Google that. Substitutions to turn all-purpose flour into bread flour. There's a list of substitutions, and y'all, I probably wouldn't buy them myself because some of them are ingredients that I'm just not going to keep in my pantry all the time. Okay? You could probably, and this is going to be in our next thing we're fixing to cover, protein powder. That might be an option. You know, like you go to the health food section at the health section, the weight loss section in the pharmacy, and they've got those canisters of whey protein. Y'all, that might be an option. Don't quote me on that. Just know that's an idea I just had. Google it. See if that can help. Okay? Now, that's your different flours, because I'm getting into grinding the different kinds of flours. I'm getting the hard white wheat, the soft white wheat, because the soft white wheat you can use in a lot of your desserts. Okay? I'm losing it, y'all. Rye. I want to try some rye. Okay? Y'all know that bread, that rye bread they serve at Outback Steakhouse? I love that bread. I want to try getting the rye grains. Okay? My husband can tolerate the wheat and other grains better than he can the flours that are rice-based. Okay? The rice just bothers him. I have to cut those carbs out. Okay, that's the reason why I wanted to get into healthier grains for him and grinding our own grains. I will get into that further down in the third section when we get into freshly grinded flour, freshly milled flour, whichever one you want to use. And y'all, you can be looking into the attachment for the KitchenAid mixer, Nutri Magic Meal. Is that what it's called? I think. Y'all can be checking into those, okay? Y'all, I've also have these different things in my Amazon store, okay? My grinder attachment, my wheat berries, and all such as that I've been binding to get you ready for that one if you want to try. Okay? But that's going to be coming later. Right now, we're just going to be using what's coming from the grocery store, okay? You can use the bag of all-purpose. If you want to use the bread flour and that be your flour of your purpose, use that one, okay? The whole wheat flour. But if I was y'all, try to get the unbleached, okay? Because you want the amount of nutrition in it as possible. Okay, that's the flours, okay? Your liquid in your bread. Water, you can use milk. But I heard a lady suggest don't just use all milk. Use maybe like 1% or 2%. You can use powdered milk. But if you're just going to use whole milk, do half and half. Half milk, half water. Kind of dilute it a little bit. Something about using all milk makes it richer, but it can also change the texture and make it a little gummier. I think that's what she said. Okay, so I've got a bag of powdered milk I need to use up. I may throw that in some recipes. Okay, we are going to try different recipes. I'm going to use some recipes that I have used for years. Okay, and then we're going to experiment switching up and using some that uses different ingredients, just to give you some ideas and see which one might work for y'all and see how it's going to turn out for video purposes and say, when I slice into it, are y'all going to like that texture better? Am I going to like that texture better? Am I going to like that recipe better, or am I going to stick to my old ones? We're going to try different things, y'all. We're going to play with our food, okay? So your liquids, water, milk, whey. You can substitute in some breads and use whey. If you make cheese, okay, and you say you're straining your cheese. I make cheese, y'all. You're straining. That's videos I haven't made yet, but I do make cheese, y'all. Okay, we're gonna get into that. I'm gonna do some of those. I'm gonna be playing around, get my stuff back out because it's been packed up, y'all, since my goats, and I haven't made cheese since my goats, and I need to get back into it, and I will. Okay, but if you make cheese, if you make sour cream, if you make ricotta, you make mozzarella, okay? Save your whey. Use that in place of your liquid, okay? So water, milk, powdered milk, whey. You can substitute and play around whichever suits you best, okay? Try a recipe with that liquid in it. The next recipe, change a liquid. Then see which one you like the best. Taste preferences, y'all, is what you're going to come down to when you're breaking down all these different recipes, okay? Your fats. Some recipes are going to call for a fat. Some recipes are not. Your fats can be an oil. Be careful using certain oils, like olive oil, the richer olive oil. You may not want to make a sandwich loaf, an everyday sandwich loaf, or cinnamon rolls and have olive oil taste in it. You see what I'm saying? Be careful of your oils. Your butter. You can use butter all day long if you want to. Some people use lard. Okay? I haven't. Amish, loves that lard, y'all, and they use lard in a lot of their recipes because, y'all, they render their own lard when they butcher their pigs, okay? They put that lard to use, and they use it in 99% of everything, okay? They bake with it, they cook with it, everything, okay? I haven't done that. My husband doesn't really care for the taste of lard, okay? I used it in some pie crusts one time. He didn't care for the lard taste, all right? So I went back to using butter. So your fat can be oil or butter. Just be careful. I would use unsalted butter because you're already going to have salt in your recipe. So you don't want too much salt, use unsalted butter. Your oils, be careful. If you use coconut oil, just know you're going to get a coconutty flavor. If you use avocado oil, just know you're going to get an avocado flavor. Okay? Pay attention to your oils. The major oils is going to be canola oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, something that is not going to give a heavy taste. Just keep it basic. Your sweeteners. Okay, write this out by your sweetener. Sugar, y'all, you can use the regular sugar out of the bag, okay? Sugar, remember, I told you, activates your yeast. You're going to have it, okay? Your sugar, you can use the granulated sugar. You can use honey. You can use molasses. Molasses gives a very good flavor, okay? Honey gives a very good flavor. What's another kind of sweetener? You can use brown sugar because, y'all, brown sugar is just sugar with the molasses in it. There you go. You can use brown sugar. Now, y'all, I'm not sure about stevia. I have used it, but stevia bakes a little different than regular sugar. Okay? It does bake different. I'm not sure about the monk fruit, the swerve. Y'all, try it. But I try to use what I have on hand. I have used a stevia, and I do have granulated sugar on hand for this purpose, okay? I do have honey, and I do have molasses, okay? Just know you still need a sweetener because that activates your yeast, okay? Now, yeast. You can use, there's 3 different kinds of yeast you can find at the store. You can find the yeast that's formulated to use with bread machines for the bread machine. Y'all, I still love my bread machine too. I can use it on a whim, okay? I like whipping up a bread, like I don't have any no-knead bread on hand, but I am making some broccoli and cheese soup or some tomato soup, and I would really love to have a homemade loaf of bread. Let's throw these ingredients in my bread machine. Your flour, now, y'all, I do use, you can go and buy the bread machine yeast, but y'all, I can also use the rapid rise yeast. There's 3 different types of yeast. The bread machine yeast, the rapid rise yeast, and then the active dry yeast. The rapid rise means it's formulated to make your dough rise quicker. Okay? Hence, rapid rise. The rapid rise, you can just throw into your recipe. Okay? In with your flour and your wet ingredients. Okay? Your dry active yeast, you can just throw that in there with your flour and stuff, but a lot of people like to test their yeast first, and they'll go ahead and activate it with the water and the sugar to test it, and it's called proofing your yeast to make sure, okay, my yeast is not ruined. A lot of people will do that, the active dry yeast, for that purpose, to make sure your yeast is still good, to make sure it hasn't expired, because there's nothing like opening up a package of yeast and you want that bread to turn out good, but then all of a sudden you see it's not rising like it should. You can't get that rise out of it like you're supposed to, and it's not doing right. It's not baking up right. Check your yeast, and I'll tell you that tip in just a minute. A lot of people like to proof their yeast first before they throw it in that recipe so they don't get disappointed. You proof your yeast by adding your water. Go ahead and put in your yeast that it calls for in the recipe, your water that it calls for in the recipe, and the sugar, the sweetener it calls for in the recipe. Let it sit for a few minutes. If it's not bubbling up and if it's not proofing and activating, you got a dead yeast. You need to throw that batch out and get you some more. Okay? Active dry yeast, you can also throw it into your recipe and you don't have to proof it. But with the active dry, you need to increase your rising time. When you're letting your bread rise, you need to add some more minutes. It's going to take longer than the rapid rise. You see the difference between those yeasts? Okay, the rapid rise you can throw in the recipe. Now you can check your rapid rise yeast too if you want to, okay, to see if it activates and it's good yeast. Okay, I haven't done it, all right, but the rapid rise you can throw in the recipe, and the rising time doesn't have to take as long. You will see real quick it's rising. Okay, because I used that one time in my cinnamon rolls, and before I got them cinnamon rolls cut with the floss, they were already bubbling up on me before I even got them into the pan. So my rising time was cut in half, y'all. So your active dry yeast, you can try to proof it, but it's going to take longer to rise. So add some minutes to your rising time, okay? Store your yeast in the freezer, okay? It keeps it fresher and it keeps it better for longer. I learned that the hard way. I would always keep my yeast in a little closed like or a mason jar in the pantry. My yeast, I noticed like it was depleting in its activity, and I'm like, my yeast is going bad. It's expiring. So I started buying the bag and keeping it in the freezer. And then I just get out a little at a time if I know I'm going to be using it quickly, okay? Or you can just get it out when you're getting ready to use it. Freezing it saves your yeast, okay? There's the differences in your yeast, okay? That's the ingredients in all of basic recipes, y'all. That's going to be your main ingredients. Then you're going to see some are going to use milk and oils, fats, okay? So just know, you can intertwine these. That's your basic ingredients. You can add a few things. Know the difference between, you got your notes for your flour there. If you got your notes for the liquids you can use. If you got your notes for your sweetener. The differences in your yeast, how to activate them, which one to use for which, and how to store them. Okay, y'all, this is the reason why I'm putting this in this video. If you're missing something, save this video, come back to it, make you an outline. Okay, let's see. Also, when you're searching for your favorite bread recipe, find a recipe that's for multi-purposes. So that way you don't have a recipe just for a sandwich loaf. You don't have a recipe just to make rolls and hamburger buns. You don't have a recipe just for sandwich loaves. A recipe just for baguettes. A recipe just for cinnamon rolls. If you can find a recipe that has multi-purposes, that's the recipe you want to cling to. Okay? So you're not filling up a recipe book full of all these 50 different bread recipes. I like a multi-purpose recipe, okay, that I can use to make breads, rolls, buns, all the different kind of buns, okay, French loaves, baguettes, okay, sandwich loaves, okay, then the round artisan crusty loaf, okay. We're going to be making one of those with a bread recipe, not just the 5-minute no-knead bread. Cinnamon rolls, pizza crust. If you can find a multi-purpose recipe that can cover all these different categories, that's the one you want to hang on to. So do your research. Find one, okay? Play around with it. My recipe that I use to make my rolls and my hamburger buns, I also use that recipe for my cinnamon rolls, and I'll just substitute the flours. Okay? Now, I haven't tried it yet to make a sandwich loaf, but y'all, I'm playing around. Okay? Now, when you're that's your basic outline. Then when you find your multi-purpose recipe, then you can play with those add-ins. Okay? Your nuts, your seeds, your berries, your fruit, your spreads, okay? Y'all in your cinnamon rolls, you can use pumpkin pie filling. You can use jams, jellies, Nutella for those kiddos. Your cinnamon rolls. What's another kind of spread you can put in there? Jams, jellies, pumpkin pie, y'all, puree, the purees. You can put different things in there. Y'all, you can use your cans of blueberry filling, cherry pie filling to make different rolls, y'all, instead of cinnamon rolls. That bread dough can still be used to make that sweet roll. See what I'm saying? Okay, so don't forget your add-ins. Put a star by that one. Your add-ins, your cheeses, your jalapenos, okay? Your add-ins. I know a woman who puts onions, mushrooms. Y'all, the possibilities are endless with your add-ins, whatever you want. So put a star by that one. You can take any multi-purpose bread recipe and throw some things in it and soup it up, kick it up a notch. All right? So now let's get into the notes on, y'all, I'm serious. I had to write all this down. Let me cover some things on those bullet points. I told you try your different shapes, your rolls, your buns, your crescent rolls, your croissants, your bagels, your sandwich loaves, your round loaves. Use different pans. I can mark that off, okay? All your recipes will tell you up front. Now we're going to get into some baking aspects of the bread, what to start looking for and what to start noticing, okay? Let's see. Let me go back up here because y'all, I watched the lady's video and I took notes in some books that I've got, and I'm like, oh, I need to write that down for myself, and I need to tell them about that. So y'all, I've got books at home. My artisan book, my artisan bread baking book, another book my husband gave me, my bread machine book, and then I've got a book that's got all different kind of recipes in it. So I'm taking all these different notes and I'm writing them all down for you because I've done the research. I'm just making it easier on you and I'm refreshing my memory. So here we go. Okay, now, bread baking tips. Things that you're going to start noticing and you're going to look for when you're experimenting with your own. When you're mixing your dough, let's start from the beginning, okay? All of your recipes are going to tell you how much flour up front. 5 cups of flour, okay? But when you're first putting your ingredients into your mixing bowl, whether you're kneading it by hand or you're using your stand mixer, only put half first. The reason for this, you dump all that flour in there at one time, a bunch of things are going to happen. You may not need all that flour. You're going to put stress on your stand mixer. You're going to put stress on your hands. Start out using half first. Add it as you need it. N-E-E-D. Okay? It's a necessity, okay? Add it gradually. If you dump all that bread in there at one time, like I said, you may not need it. Okay? It's going to estimate how much bread you need up front. Okay? As you're mixing in your mixing bowl your bread, start out with half. If it is still wettish and sticky, add a little at a time. Add a little at a time. It's easier to add right now, and you can monitor the stretchiness. Is it pulling away from the bowl like it should be, or is it still? Okay, we'll get into that too in just a minute. How long you need to knead your dough and mix your dough, okay? We're fixing to cover that. But add it a little at a time. You add too much flour to a recipe and you're going to change your whole texture. It may make it dry. It may make it gummier. It may make it crumbly. Okay? Your ingredients are pulling together to activate molecules. I'm not even going to get into the science right now. All these ingredients are working together to create molecules, to put off gases, create gluten. That's as far as I'm going to say, because I really don't want to confuse you right now, okay? Baking bread can be a science, but you're going to make it. We're going to break down all this stuff to where it doesn't overwhelm you and you don't get frustrated, and you'll understand when you get to these next steps. And y'all join in with me making some of these breads, okay? A lot of stuff comes into play with baking bread. Don't dump all your flour in there at one time. Start out gradually. Now, if you're doing this by hand, you're going to be able to feel. Okay? So let's start from kneading by hand first. Use your hands to be like, this is still sticking. I don't like it. Let's add some more flour. Only add the amount of flour up to what the recipe calls for. Okay? You don't want to overflour. Okay. Next, you can use your hands if you're kneading this by hand. All right? You'll be able to tell the texture, the stretchiness. If you're using a bread mixer, a stand mixer, okay, you'll be able to tell if it's pulling away from the bowl or not. Your hands are not in there to pull this dough away from the sides of your mixing bowl. But if you're kneading it by hand, your hands are pulling that dough apart from. So things to look for that I have to look for when I'm doing this in my stand mixer. I'm kneading it in the stand mixer. I give it more time because I noticed one time when I was making bread, I'm like, this is not pulling away from the bowl like it should. It's going back to gummy, sticky. And I started adding more flour thinking that was going to solve the problem. In your kneading, let me get comfortable, y'all. In your kneading your bread, we got the mixing. Just add your flour a little at a time. Now the kneading part comes next, okay? In the mixer, I knead mine for longer because, y'all, first of all, I can't hardly do it by hand. If you're kneading it by hand, you're also going to have to knead it for longer because you need that stretchiness. And a lot of times recipes will call for 10 minutes of kneading. But y'all, if the dough is still sticky, whether you're kneading it by hand or you're doing it in the mixer, do longer than 10 minutes. The longer you knead your dough, you're creating the stretchiness. The gluten is working. The more you knead it, it will become less sticky. And it will start, if in the mixer, it will start pulling away from the edges. I was making the mistake of like, okay, it's been 10 minutes. This is still sticky. I'm going to have to add more flour because it's still sticking to the bowl. Okay? That was my mistake. My bread was coming out crumbling. It was changing the texture because I was adding more flour. Okay? Whether you're doing it by hand or you're doing it in your stand mixer. Okay? Knead it for longer. The longer you knead it, the less sticky it becomes because the gluten is working and it's hanging on to that flour and it's going to get stretchier. Okay? Your flour will get less sticky and stretchier because the gluten needs more time to work rather than 10 minutes. You can never over-knead a bread. You can over-knead biscuits, but you can't bread. The longer that you knead it, if your arms can handle it, doing it by hand, y'all, more power to you. If I ever do try to knead some by hand, I will not be able to knead it that long. But when I use my stand mixer, I will knead it for longer because it will get less sticky. And the gluten takes a little longer to give you that stretch and that pull to where you can fold. Okay? Stretch and fold, okay? And won't pull apart on you. Okay? That's going to result in a better texture in your bread. Softer texture. The more gluten, the softer, less crumbly bread you're going to get. Trust me. Avoid the temptation of adding more flour. Make it through this process. Okay? Trust me. If you see, okay, we're going on 15 minutes here. We're going on 20 minutes of kneading. Add only tablespoons at a time. Then in between those tablespoons, just give it about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay? I promise you'll see a difference. The next time I made that bread, I was like, okay, we're gonna give it longer in my stand mixer. Then I was like, aha, that's where I went wrong. I wasn't letting it knead long enough. Avoid the temptation of just dumping more flour in there because it's not pulling away from the bowl and creating that dough ball around your hook on your stand mixer, okay? Avoid that temptation. Keep kneading the dough. And if it's been longer than 10 minutes, you're going on 15, you're going on 20, and you still ain't seen a difference, only do a tablespoon at a time. Keep your hands oiled or floured, okay, to make it through that process. Knead your bread for longer than 10 minutes. It will get less sticky and it will start coming together and getting that stretch that you need. The way to test whether it's been kneaded long enough is called a window pane test. Write this down. Test. You can either do this. A lot of your recipes, after you've kneaded it, is going to call for a resting period for like 10 minutes. This kind of, after you've worked up the gluten and got that stretchy, your dough needs to calm down for a few minutes. It's had its workout. You've had your workout. If you've done that by hand, it's called a resting period. You can do this window pane test before or after, but you might want to do it after. After you knead your bread, you got your mixing, you got your kneading. Now we need a rest period. Most 99% of recipes, this is going to be your steps. Mixing, kneading, resting, shaping and forming, putting it in that pan, rising, and then baking. You've got steps to your bread baking process, but y'all, we're going to get you prepared for this so you can be thinking about it, mulling it around in your brain, and it'll cut out the science, okay? Be thinking about it, the reasons behind all this. So you've got your mixing, your kneading, your resting. Then you're shaping and you're putting it in the loaf pans or however you're going to do it, okay? Okay, then you're baking. Then you're cooling. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so let's go back to the resting. After the resting period, you want to do the window pane test. What you do is just take a little chunk of dough. Try to start stretching it and pulling it apart, kind of like you're making a pizza crust. You're stretching and pulling. If you can stretch out, pull that bread apart, and it's not breaking in the middle, you know that gluten has worked. You want that stretch without it breaking. See how thin you can stretch it without it breaking. The window pane test is if you can stretch it without it breaking and you can see light through it, put it up towards the light. If you can see light through it and you've stretched it and it hadn't broke, that's the perfect loaf. That's the perfect dough. It's passed the window pane test. If it doesn't pass that test, maybe let it knead a little bit longer. Try that on your next loaf, okay? After your resting period, it needs a rest, okay? Then you're going to, let's see, during the resting period, Let me find this. Let me find it. I wrote it down during the resting period. During the resting period, y'all, you do want to cover it up. And it can still be at room temperature because this is not your rising. This is just your resting. So you do want to cover it up with something and give it that resting period, okay? If you don't cover it up, you don't want your dough to start drying out, okay? After it's been exposed to the air, okay? After it's rested, let me go back. Let me go back. She said something about the resting period, y'all. Resting times depend. I knew I wrote it down, y'all. Let me tell you this. Resting times, and I wrote this down from one of my books, depend on your flour. All-purpose flour doesn't need as much resting time because it soaks up water quickly. If you're using freshly milled flour, whole wheat, oat, stuff like that, your resting time needs to be a little longer because it's going to take longer for that dense flour to soak up that water, okay? So give your denser grain flour a longer resting time, okay? Covered that one. And I covered the difference in the all-purpose flour, okay? I covered that part. So we got that sheet of paper. Now let's get into the shaping. What are you going to do with this dough? Are you going to be making rolls? Are you going to be making hamburger buns? Are you going to be making a sandwich loaf? What kind of pan are you going to be using? Okay, this you're making this bread dough for anything. Okay, some kind of bread or roll. Okay, your rising time, whatever you're making. Rising time requires warmth. You can do this in a room temperature. But y'all, the perfect temperature sometimes for rising breads, rolls, buns, sandwich loaves is like 80 degrees. Is your kitchen 80 degrees? Probably not, especially if you've got the air on during the summer. Okay? So bread rising requires a little bit of warmth. Okay? Let's see, you can proof your bread or rise your bread somehow. I will turn my oven light on in my oven. My oven light creates enough warm atmosphere in there that it makes my bread rise really good because it creates that little bit of warmth. You can turn on your oven, be very careful to the lowest temperature that your oven will go. If your oven has a feature on it like a warming zone, warming temperature, 170 degrees, however low temperature that your oven will let you go. If y'all don't use y'all's for storage purposes, like everybody thought that's what that drawer was in the bottom of your oven. Did y'all know that bottom drawer in your oven is actually a warming zone? Y'all, we grew up thinking that was just an extra drawer to store pots and pans with. That's a warming zone. I had no clue. A lot of people didn't know this. I was today years old when I found that out. Okay? That can be a good warming zone. My oven also has one of the little eyes in the very back in the center with a warming zone on it. I can set my bread on there to rise. If you have a gas oven, your pilot light inside your oven creates the warmth that you need to rise bread. I know a lady who has a gas oven, and her pilot light stays lit all the time, but her top of her oven, her stove gets warm enough with that pilot light being lit that she can set hers on top of her gas stove, and that's her warming. Some people will use a crock pot on a keep warm setting to rise bread in. I have never made bread in a crock pot, y'all, but we may try that. That may be coming. Anywhere that you can create a warm atmosphere, just not baking, but just warm, to activate all of that stuff together to make that bread rise. Okay? Create a warming zone. If you're just doing it at a room temperature, cover it up and put it somewhere where there's no drafts. Stick it in your oven to where there's no drafts. Maybe a sunshiny part of a window. Try that. Okay? You do want to cover it. Some people use saran wrap. There's all different kind of ways people cover their bread. You can use saran wrap. You can use a dry tea towel. You can use a hot tea towel. Run a tea towel. If you don't have a warming place and you want to do this room temperature, get you a tea towel and hot water, and then warm up that tea towel and squeeze it out, then lay that across the top. That hotness, that steam from that wetness and your tea towel will help it create a little warmth. Okay? If you have a wood burning stove, a lot of people, y'all, still use them wood burning stoves to cook with and heat with during the winter, and they use it during the summertime too to cook with. Those wood burning stoves, you can set it on top of there. A heating pad. I've seen some people create warmth with a heating pad on a low setting. Y'all, you can create warmth for your bread dough. That's what makes it rise. Just get creative, but just know this ain't the baking process, okay? But you're going to have to put your dough, your rolls or your buns or whatever, in that pan, whatever you're using, before it starts rising. Okay, shape your loaf of bread, get it in that loaf pan, your sheet pan that you're using for your rolls. Okay, you're going to have to get that dough onto whatever pan you're using and whatever shape you're formulating according to what you're baking. Get it on or in that pan, then let it go, then cover it up and go through that rising time. According to did y'all know that humidity and temperature affects rising time? We covered the temperature. You want it warm. Humidity affects bread rising time and bread baking time. I can bake bread better and have better results, and it come out so much better during the wintertime than I can during the summertime. Even my bread machine knows the season. Humidity, your altitude can make a difference. Your altitude can make a difference. Some climates are warmer than other climates during the summertime. Okay? You may have more humidity during the summertime in your house than someone who lives on the coast during the summertime in their house. But it's the same season. But y'all got different altitudes, different humidities, different temperatures. So somebody can probably have a better outcome here than somebody over here, just simply because of the humidity, the altitude. Okay? Just know this, okay? I don't want to freak you out, but it can, okay? After your bread has risen for the amount of time, y'all, if you want to go longer, you can go from 30 minutes. If you've got something that has absolutely doubled in size in 30 minutes, woohoo, that's good. Y'all, I've seen some doughs take up to 2 hours to get that rise that you want, simply because something has affected it. The temperature, the humidity, the altitude, the season. It could take 30 minutes up to 2 hours for your bread to rise, okay? A way that you can check your bread to see if you've got the perfect rise, stick your finger in it. I'm not talking you don't want to punch your dough back down and release all those gases. Just barely. The longer, if it springs right back, it's not ready. If you can stick your finger in it and it stay there, it's ready. Okay? Let's see. We talked through the let's see, the resting time. Let's see, if you're going to use all-purpose flour, get unbleached. Get unbleached. If you let your bread rise too long, this is why you need to do that little indentation test. If you don't do the little indentation test, like maybe every 30 minutes, if you let bread rise too long, that yeast will get so fermented, you can have some drunken squirrels. Yeah, you can have some drunken squirrels. Let's see what else. Yeast can get very fermented, okay? And then it will ruin your bread because it will be too yeasty tasting and it won't be any good. So I've had to throw some out. I accidentally left some in to rise one time too long, and I could start smelling it. And I was like, oh, my son's like, you're going to have to throw these out and let's watch the squirrels. Okay. So you can have it too long. Just do that little indentation test like every 30 minutes or something, okay? If it springs back, it's not ready. If it kind of stays, it's ready, okay, for your rising time. Okay, I'm going back over. Let's make sure I'm not missing anything. Checking the rise. I think I just covered that. If it springs back and you can't see the dent, then it needs to go for longer. And every loaf may not be the same, y'all. Trust me. Every loaf may not be the same. Okay, so we got that one. Okay, let me back up just a second. If you're putting this on a sheet pan or another kind of pan or a sandwich loaf, or the bread loaf pans, make sure you oil or grease your pan really good, because y'all, there is nothing. Even get the rims of the top if you're using the sandwich loaves or the bread loaves. The sandwich loaves, y'all, I'm talking about, you know how like you've got in the grocery store, you've got your flat top sandwich loaf bread, then you've got your sandwich loaf bread that's domed on top. You know, you can buy those two different kinds of sandwich loaves. The flat sandwich loaf type, y'all, is made in those Pullman pans that has the lid on top that stops the rise and bakes it with the flat top. Okay, I have one of those. I baked with it, okay? And y'all, that bread could have gone just about 5 to maybe 10 minutes longer. I wanted it a little browner than that. So next time I will increase that time a little bit. That's the first time I ever used that pan. So I'll know next time I can increase it a little bit. I just thought I'd throw that in there. And then the other one's what I call bread loaf, is the one that just looks like the little meatloaf pan, y'all. Just make sure you grease or oil your pans very good, because there's nothing like going through all that to make a loaf of bread for it to stick to your pan and pull some of your crust off. There's nothing more aggravating than that. Even a non-stick pan, if it says it's a non-stick pan, don't trust it, go ahead and oil it. I'm not kidding, y'all. There's nothing more aggravating. Okay, so we've gone through that. I'm checking off my notes, y'all, because I'm telling y'all, it took me 2 weeks to go through my books, to remember things, go back through my videos already that I've done, to write all this stuff down. So I'm like, I just scribbled it, y'all, and it's all in these pages. I just scribbled it. I'm having trouble reading my own writing, but we're marking things off. Okay, let's see. Checking the rise on your bed. But it's fine. Okay, let's go to the next page. I covered that one. Let's see. So your resting time, the window pane test. Okay, now for the baking. Okay, you're just gonna follow. We got to the rising time. I think I got all the notes on the rising time. Let me go back to the very beginning, y'all. I checked that one off. I'm just going back just to make sure. Got covered that one. I covered that whole page. I just went through this one. If you see a recipe that uses the word auto lease, that means that your dough is it's the soaking time or the resting time. Some recipes will say auto lease, some recipes will say resting. Okay, that term, that's your resting time. Okay, that resting time is just like it's giving it a rest from forming all that gluten. If you're going to use all-purpose flour, use the unbleached. Yeasted breads ferments if left out too long for rising. I covered that. I could check that off. Baking your bread. Different recipes may call for different baking times too, and it depends on y'all. Usually, some of your recipes are going to have a time, an estimated time. Some of your breads may say until golden brown. Okay. You may not want to do the knife or the toothpick test like you do on cakes and muffins, because you don't want to deflate your bread. Sometimes you're going to have to eyeball it, y'all. That's the reason why on that Pullman loaf, the lid was on there, and I'm like, how am I supposed to know when it's done? I'm just going to go by the minutes, okay? I had to go by the minutes on that one because I didn't want to pull the lid off and escape all that steam and that temperature and then ruin my loaf and take a chance on it collapsing. Okay, so that was like a trial and error. So next time I'll know I can get my bread a little longer in that pan. Every oven is different. Gas ovens are going to bake and cook different than electric ovens. Let me say that right now. I have an electric oven. My mama has a gas oven. And yeah, they bake totally different. Okay? So just know the difference in your ovens. Okay? And you probably already know that. Okay. When you get your bread out of the oven or your rolls or your hamburger buns, let them cool off first. Okay? If you are tempted to dive into that roll or that bun and you're using that knife and you're going to cut it open, if they're not cooled off good first, you're going to get a gummy texture. That's what creates a gummy texture in a lot of your breads, is not letting it cool enough first before you are just tempted to dive into it and want to slather that butter on it while it's still warm. I've done it myself, y'all. But try to avoid the temptation, especially loaves of bread, sandwich loaves, the artisan loaves. Let those babies cool before you try to start slicing them. If you if you've made the sandwich loaf, whether it's in the Pullman pan or in the bread loaf pan, let it cool just a little bit first. Then take a knife and kind of go around the edges to loosen it and pull it away from all four sides. Then try to like get it over on its side and gently kind of start pulling it out. Don't just kind of like turn it over, bang it, and dump it. You're going to crush your bread. Okay, and you can probably, if it falls out, it can probably hang on to some of that crust too. Okay, so be very gentle because you want to take the bread out of the pans so it doesn't cook longer in the pan, but be gentle getting it out, okay? Then setting it on a wire rack that's kind of lifted up to cool. You want the bottom of it to cool too. So the bottom of it, all the heat and the steam is not going to the crust at the bottom and it getting soggy. Okay? So get those little wire racks that's got like the little feet on the bottom of it. So your bread will be off of the countertop. So the bottom of it can cool too. So if you're looking for cookie what are they called? Baker's racks, cookie racks. Get those that's kind of got like the little feet on the bottom of it, the little V-like wire things, okay? You'll know what I'm talking about when you see them. So it will lift up whatever that needs to cool on the bottom too. So after you're baking, you take it out, you know, give it like 5 minutes before you try to take it out of that pan or off that cookie sheet, whatever, and then put it on that wire rack, okay? But resist that temptation to start sawing into that loaf of bread, because you can rip the top of the part of your bread. Okay, you don't want to do that because it's still soft and in that soft state and fragile state. Okay, you can tear your bread, and then when you get down into the loaf, you can make it gummy because you have poof real quick. Okay, so try to avoid that temptation. You can always put some butter or heat up that bread just a little bit for like 6 to 10 seconds in the microwave, get it warm again, and then put that butter on it. Okay, it's just as good that way. Okay. Fresh bread ruins quicker than store-bought bread. Freshly baked bread, you will need to eat it or use it up or freeze it, okay, before it starts going bad. Okay, if you're going to do like batches of bread, eat on one, put the others in the freezer. Bread freezes very well. Y'all, I accidentally left a store-bought pack of bread. I think it was like 5 or 6 slices, and somehow it got pushed to the back of the pantry, and before I realized and found it, about 2 months had passed. I opened up that loaf of bread and I was like, ew, how moldy is this bread? Y'all, I opened up that bread, and did y'all know there was not one mold spot on that bread? Kind of makes me wonder, how strong was the preservatives in that bread to make it last that long? How long has that bread been sitting on that shelf before you purchase it? Okay? That bread was preserved, y'all. And it kind of made me wonder, I just put that in my body. Y'all, that's probably the reason why a lot of people have stomach issues, is these preservatives. Are we supposed to be long shelf life? I don't know. But y'all, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here right quick. A lot of preservatives, y'all, are causing gut issues. Irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, what's the other one? Gastrointestinal, whatever. Okay? Gut issues, y'all. Your body's not digesting those preservatives. That got me to thinking, oh my gosh. That was another reason why I wanted to get into freshly milled flours, grinding my own grains. That was another reason. So y'all, that made me think. So, freshly baked bread is going to mold quicker and ruin quicker. Okay? Use that bread up. Okay? I gave y'all suggestions about, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't know. I've watched so many of my videos, y'all, and I wrote down so many things. You can store it in the refrigerator or you can store it in a bread box, but y'all keep an eye on it. Freshly baked bread is going to mold and ruin quicker because it's fresh. You didn't use preservatives. You know what's in your bread. Okay? If you got some bread that's starting to get bread freezes well. If you spend a day batch baking bread, rolls, buns, I used to do this, y'all, and you can freeze it. Okay, you can buy the little bread bags. Save bread bags, y'all. Save bread bags and the little ties. Okay, then start putting your bread in there and freezing it. Okay, Ziploc bags. You can go ahead and slice your loaves of bread and put it in Ziploc bags, or you can put the whole loaf in there if you've got a big enough Ziploc bag. Okay, freeze it. Okay? Let's see. If you've got bread that's starting to go stale, y'all, you can turn that bread into so many things. I can slice it and cube it up and turn it into a breakfast casserole with some sausage, bacon, ham, eggs, cheese, you name it. Throw it in the crock pot. You can actually do like bread pudding. You can do some breads. You can take your leftover chunked up bread, eggs, nuts, raisins. You can put anything in that bread that you want and throw it in a crock pot and turn it into like a bready casserole, bread pudding, whatever. Got a little bit of syrup, powdered sugar, French toast. Turn around and make French toast. You can cube it up and bake it, toast it in the oven. You've got croutons for salads. You can store those in an airtight container, mason jar. Then you can take those croutons, run them through a food processor, and you've got your own breadcrumbs to use for making crusted chicken, pork chops. Instead, you don't want to use flour and fry. You might want to just use roll them around in these breadcrumbs and bake them in the oven and still get that fried effect. Parmesan chicken. You've got your own Italian breadcrumbs or just breadcrumbs. You can season them with Italian seasoning if you want to. There's so many things to do with bread that's going bad. Okay? Okay. Don't throw that bread out yet. Use it for some reason. Use it for some reason. I even took some sourdough notes, y'all, because eventually, y'all, it's eating at me. I want to try sourdough, but I got to do a lot more experimenting before I do that, okay? I got a long before I go down that road. Okay, I'm making it through my notes, y'all. Just recapping to see. We got the window pane test. Yeasted breads are gonna ruin quicker, ferment faster. You might get them little drunk squirrels or birds. Just be careful, okay? That's the window pane test. Your freshly milled flours. Now, I'm probably going to cover this again when I get to that section. But if you want to start looking into and getting some on hand now and getting ready, in our Amazon store, I've got my grinding mill attachment. I've got the berries that we've bought. And y'all, if you've got like a health food store or an Amish store, a Mennonite store, you can probably go and buy the bigger bags, like the 25-pound bags. But some things about freshly milled flour. You need to store them in an airtight container, maybe with some of those little oxygenizer things, y'all, to keep, bugs out, of course, because they're attracted to those berries, okay? You can get a 5-gallon bucket with a lid from Tractor Supply. Anybody, you can order them off of Amazon to store your grains in. Don't leave them in those bags. You're going to attract bugs and mice, and they'll eat through those bags. So get you an airtight container, like a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. Only grind the amount of grain that you're going to use in a quick amount of time. Okay? Don't grind up a whole 5-pound bag of or a little a canister full of flour and not use it real quick. Okay? It'll ruin quicker, and there will go all of your nutrition. Let's see. I covered all that. I got all that. Yeah, find you a multi-purpose bread recipe. I covered that you can use for multiple things, and then you only got one to keep up with. If you want to play around with the different ingredients in the bread, go ahead, because I'm going to do that. We're going to do some different recipes, okay? See which one we like the best. Be patient while it's kneading. I covered all that. Give it a little more time. If it's still sticky, resist the temptation to just keep adding flour. Let's see. You can't, I think we just about covered everything, y'all. We covered everything, y'all. But I wanted to do this right in the amongst of here, before we get started, so that way it won't overwhelm you. You'll know what you've got to look forward to. You can be going ahead and doing some of your homework, and we can do this together. Yeah, I think I covered all my notes, y'all. And you're probably going to hear some of these same tips again in the videos, because that's just how my mind works, y'all. If it pops into my mind and as I'm doing it at that moment, you're probably going to hear it again. But I wanted to make sure I made a video to where I can put it all in one video, to where you can refer back to this one and save it, and you're not having to fish through videos to try to find one piece of advice. What'd she say about that? I don't know what video it's in. It's gonna all be in this one, okay? And just know, like, what everything we did with that 5-minute no-knead bread recipe, we're gonna carry those same fundamentals through this next section with all the yeast breads, whether you knead it by hand or with a stand mixer. And then we're going to use those same fundamentals when we get to the grinding our own grain. Can't wait till we get to that section, because y'all, I've already been practicing and I'm already loving it, and I think you probably will too, and you might like the nutritional value a whole lot better. And y'all, that bag of grains that I bought, I'm getting more out of it than I am that 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour. And it's healthier. But yeah, y'all, I'm not knocking all-purpose flour from the grocery store, because like I said, I still use it. Sometimes I have to rely on that when we're traveling, but I still want some bread. I just probably use that flour or some whole wheat flour and do my best and use my 5-minute no-knead bread recipe, because I don't have my stand mixer and all I got's my air fryer. So I'll have to rely on some of those. That's the reason why I wanted to do a no-knead version first to start you out with, and then graduate to get into some different breads. But y'all, sourdough, I'm still learning. I will get over my fear, and I will eventually try to dive into it, and I'll play with it and experiment with it. If I find out it's not for me, okay. But y'all, I really do want to learn sourdough, but that's going to take a while, okay? So, y'all, start finding you a basic recipe. I'm going to have a few that I'm going to try and play around with, and then a multi-purpose recipe we're going to try and pull from. We're going to use different pans. We're going to shape different things. We're going to make different things, just like we did in the no-knead bread. So, but I wanted to give you this video to start out with, so you're not so intimidated and not so overwhelmed by the time we start going through this next section. Take a little bit of the science out. Take some of the surprise element out, because you're like, hey, I did that with you, but my bread didn't turn out like it. What the heck happened? See, I covered some things to look for, so maybe we can avoid the frustration and avoid some of those things from happening. And then we're going to go through some of these things together. So, y'all, if you didn't take all them notes down right now, don't worry. You can save this video, come back to it when you got time, section it out. I know it's long. I'm sorry. Section it out, and then save this video, and you'll have it. Start doing your homework. So, next, y'all, let's get into this next section of bread making, and I can't wait, y'all, because I love the smell of bread baking. Oh, it's one of my favorite smells, y'all. So let's graduate to the next step, and I'll see you in the next bread making video. We'll start out small. I think I'll make us some rolls, okay, to go with supper one night. So I'll see y'all in the next one.